When you work with pivot tables in Excel 2013, you can select from a number of different layouts. Each layout handles data and labels slightly differently, and you can pick the one that works best for your particular presentation. For this movie, I will use the layout sample file, which you can find in the Chapter 4 folder of your exercise files archive. In this movie, I will show you how to find the different layouts available to you in Excel 2013 and demonstrate how they affect the presentation of your pivot table within the workbook. To apply a layout to a pivot table, click any cell in the pivot table, and then on the Design Contextual tab, in the Layout group, click the Report Layout button. Doing so displays the layouts that are available to you. This pivot table is currently displayed in compact form, which means that the layout is as compact or as small as possible. You can see that there are no blank rows within the body of the pivot table, and also Sum of Customers is on the same level as column labels. If I want to apply a different layout, I'll just click the Report Layout button, and I'll click the next one, which is Show in Outline Form. The outline form layout has a slightly different set of characteristics. You can see, for example, that we now have blank lines underneath 2012 and 2013. That's because quarter has been moved over one level instead of being in the same column as the year. It's been moved over. One interesting aspect of outline form is that now the columns, east, north, south, and west in this case, are all the same width. If I were to click the Undo button to go back, you can see that because east is in the same column as column labels, that the east cells and values are much larger, much wider than are the cells for north, south, and west. The width doesn't really matter if you're just looking at numbers, but if you apply conditional formatting such as data bars, the length of which depend on the width of a cell, then it can make a difference. So if you're applying conditional formatting, especially data bars, then I recommend clicking the Report Layout button and clicking Show in Outline Form. That way, the width of the cells in your columns that contain the data in the body of the pivot table will all be the same width. The other layout that's available to you, if you click the Report Layout button again, is called Tabular Form. So if you click Show in Tabular Form, you get a slightly different layout. Tabular form is almost the same as outline form. The difference is that instead of having the subtotals at the top of a group, you have them at the bottom of a group. So previously, the subtotal was here on the top row with 2012. Now it's at the bottom in a separate row marked 2012 total. And while I'm in tabular form, I'll show you some other aspects of the layout you can affect. So clicking the Report Layout button again, you'll see that there are two options at the bottom, and those are Repeat All Item Labels and Do Not Repeat Item Labels. If I click Repeat All Item Labels, you'll see that now instead of having 2012 only at the top level of the pivot table, I have 2012, 2012, 2012 all the way down, so I have that value for each quarter. If you're wondering why that's important, let me rearrange the pivot table slightly by taking region and putting it underneath quarter in the rows area. Now I have data by year, by quarter, by region, and I have the sum of my customers. I also have these subtotals here for 2012, quarter number 1, quarter number 2, and so on. If I turn off subtotals by clicking the Subtotals button and clicking Do Not Show Subtotals, then I have my original data list. So if I were to click Sheet 1, which has the source data for this pivot table, see that I have 2012, quarter 1, North region, customers. If I click back on Sheet 2, I have 2012, quarter 1, East region, and so on. You can use this technique to reconstruct the original data source in case someone wants to see it and you don't have access to it. So for example, if the source file were on another computer, perhaps over a network, and you can't open it directly, you can reconstruct the list by arranging the data inside your pivot table so that you have everything in the row area, and you can do your best to approximate the order of the fields. In this case, year, quarter, and region seems like a good way to go, so that's how I rearrange them. And with all changes to a pivot table, if you want to undo what you've done before, just click the Undo button or press Ctrl-C, and Excel will reverse your changes. That's a brief overview of the different layouts available to you. Each one has its own strengths and weaknesses, so feel free to experiment and look for the best way to present your data.